In simple terms, we just wanted to improve the complex part of the old UI and make it a lot more seamless and help our, SMBs have a callback setup that's a lot simpler.
Everybody, I'm Nafu. I'm a senior front-end engineer here at Tenjin.
I'm Jazz. I'm the senior product manager at Tenjin.
I'm Ryan. I'm a senior full stack engineer.
In this video, we want to share with you how we've updated our callback setup process. So Jazz, why did we update our callback setup UI?
That's a good question. So we had our old UI where it was template based. So every time you want to add a callback, you do it one at a time, and then you do that process for every single channel. So some of our customers started having issues. Basically, they had to set up a few callbacks for a process to be successful on the ad network side, and that process was failing. So on the product side, we've always wanted to focus on making a very intuitive UI and a very simple product. Like our tagline is growth made simple. So we wanted to do something that helped our users, our end users, use the setup in a more efficient and more accurate way. So we wanted to build this new UI where A, it was faster for them, B, it was more accurate, and C, it was more intuitive what they were used to than before.
Ryan, could you walk us through the new UI and show us how it's changed?
Sure. Before I do that, I think I'd like to show the old process just to kind of give a reminder of how it used to be and why we chose to make a lot of the changes we did. I think that after seeing that, the new process will seem a lot more simple by comparison.
Awesome. Sounds good. Take it away.
So here I have my app, and I want to add a TikTok install callback. Click on New Callbacks. I can search for TikTok, find the TikTok install callback. You can see here we have a Rails form that has a lot of fields that are actually not relevant to this callback, as well as here I need to set my TikTok app ID. Once I set that, it'll take me to the callback details page. And once that's done, I can jump back to my app page. And I'm going to have to do that a couple more times. If you're familiar with TikTok callbacks, there's multiple versions of each, and you need to add all of them or it can impact the performance. This is something that I'm sure you all care about. You don't want lower performance, and the networks care about this a lot as well. So for the case of TikTok, we actually had a weekly script that would run. Find anyone who had, for say, an install callback without a SAN callback, and we would add that in. But in our old setup, it was quite difficult to find those, and it was not very repeatable to other networks, which we had requests from other networks for similar things as well. And so the changes we've made have made it much easier to get all the callbacks that you need created at once and also speed up the process a bit. Just adding these 3 callbacks wasn't too bad, but let's say, for instance, that I also need an in-app purchase for this app. And I look up TikTok again, and I can add this TikTok purchase. But then after I add this, TikTok app ID again. Once I add this, I'm going to have to go back through and add the TikTok SAN purchase. And then what if I have several custom events? It could take quite a long time to add all these callbacks. And if you missed one, that could impact your performance. And the networks also weren't very happy with Tenjin when there were callbacks that weren't set up correctly. And so with our new format, we want to make it faster and easier to make callbacks and also make it so that without thinking about it, you had correct callbacks. Now let's take a look at the new format. So instead of being at the bottom of this page, the callbacks tab is now up here. So we can click on this. And the callbacks are also now split up by channel. So I would look at TikTok for now. Click in here. And whereas previously, for every callback, we had to add this TikTok app ID, now we just add it once for this app. So now any callback I add will have this TikTok app ID applied to it. This should make setup much faster for you, I think. Whereas before we had to go and add 5 separate callbacks to get our TikTok install and TikTok purchase set up correctly, we're done now. That's all the setup it takes. So I think this should be a lot faster, and I think it'll be much easier to have your setup correct now, because just by clicking on this one TikTok install, you have the 3 callbacks that you had to create manually before, created automatically and bundled together. So if you turn this back off, all 3 of those are off. So this way, the partners will be happy, your campaign performance will be better, and our data will also be a little bit cleaner. So I think it works better for everybody. There's a few settings you can change here. You can change the user filter. It was a little bit complicated, I think, in our past view. Here, it'll send out this callback for every user. This setting means it will send out the callback only for users who are attributed to TikTok. And this means we'll send it for users who are attributed to TikTok and organic users. If you click on the edit, there's different settings here depending on which callback you're looking for. Here, I might want to change the name. Say this is iGems50 is this event name. You might be noticing that we have the in-app purchase, we have the ILRD callback, but we don't have the custom callback here. If you click on add events, you'll see the custom callback here, and you might see other callbacks for other ad networks. And that's for an important reason. These custom callbacks, not only do they have our Tenjin event, which you have to select, but for instance, for TikTok, you have this TikTok event. And for other networks, they might have other settings you have to change. These will be different for every callback, and so you can't just set them automatically like you can for other callbacks. But I think that they're still pretty easy to create relative to others. Whereas before you would have had to go and create 2 separate callbacks, the TikTok custom event and the TikTok SAN custom event. Now it's just one, and they're bundled together. You can also come up to this page for callback health, and in our case, none of our callbacks are failing, and so there's nothing to look at here. There are a lot of behind-the-scenes tech improvements which are encapsulated in this new slick UI. One of which is that we don't have any scripts running weekly to make sure no one's missing callbacks anymore. Since the callbacks are now bundled together on the back end, if you create a TikTok install, you can't be missing a SAN install. I'm using TikTok as the example, but many ad networks have these kind of settings, and now you can be sure that if you have your callback set up here, it's being done correctly. And this is also going to enable us to do a lot of interesting things in the future that ad networks have been requesting. A few examples that we've already been requested and have implemented now that we have this format. Some networks wanted different countries' data to go to different endpoints. Some networks wanted attributed and unattributed customers to go to different endpoints. This would have been hard to set up in our old format and would have required all our customers to go and add new callbacks. And now we could just add those behind the scenes, and you don't have to do anything to meet network requirements.
The old UI didn't have a lot of issues. It wasn't bad, it wasn't like a deal breaker. It had some good points. Like it was easier to set up on the product side and engineering side, and also for AEs to set things up. It did have some issues, which is why we wanted to explore a new UI. Some issues, for example, one, it did have more complexity than we liked. So we were showing a lot of API details, for example, that our customers didn't necessarily need, specifically our SMBs, which like indie devs, for example, they're not going to do much with it. All they care about is come there, go to our page, set up something super fast, basically have our product tell them what needs to be done, them being an expert into something and then doing that setup. So that's the mindset we had on the product side, that we wanted to reduce complexity and we want to ensure that SMB, specifically indie devs, can grow their apps with a lot of simplicity. So that was one issue. Related to this issue, it introduced some inaccuracy. For example, if someone needed to send callbacks to a partner, and for those callbacks to work properly and accurately, they needed to set up 2 callbacks, right? So they had to go on our dash and then set up those callbacks manually one at a time. And again, this is the complexity I'm talking about. We realize that they don't need to do that. They can just go on our dash, enable a toggle, and be done with it. So in simple terms, we just wanted to improve the complex part of the old UI and make it a lot more seamless and help our, SMBs have a callback setup that's a lot simpler. Because they had to set up one callback at a time for different partners, it did take them longer to do that setup. But with the new UI, we improved that setup time considerably.
I had to set 5 callbacks, for instance, to do essentially 2 actions on our old setup. It took me a little bit over a minute, being very familiar with the UI. On our new UI, it was 10, 20 seconds, and repeat that across